So, welcome to Defn, episode number
77.
With three guests. Sorry, I think 5 people in total. I think I'm gonna correct it later. So, my name is Vijay, and from what country am I in? Netherlands. I think I lost track of what the fuck is happening anymore. And we have Ray.
Hello.
Who keeps giggling. Hey, Ray. And we have guest of honor today, Michelle.
Hello.
Hello again.
Yay.
Yes, Michelle, go ahead. Please introduce yourself again.
Right. So I'm Michelle Lim. I used to work with Ray at Vouch. He hired me, actually, so thank you. And so it's good to see you again. At Vouch, I work on the mobile applications, which is a hybrid of JavaScript and Clojure script, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. And,
maybe
if we get to it. And before that, I did a lot of different things. Worked in nonprofits, teaching, freelancing. So it's been a journey.
Do you play music professionally or something? Because I see like a really nice keyboard behind you.
No, definitely not professionally, just for fun.
Oh, well,
for myself.
That's almost professional.
Actually, nobody's ever heard me play except for my partner who I live with and my best friend who I send little recordings to. So I just write songs for her because I love her.
So are you going to suggest that
nice.
you might just turn around in a moment and just start playing?
Probably not.
Oh shit, that's a shame. Okay, it could be in a Defn first there.
Is there like a mailing list I can get on?
Hey,
get
whoa.
God damn it! Jesus. Hey, welcome to Defn, Jordan. Now go on.
I didn't know my witty banter was unwelcome, I guess.
No, it is. It is, but you're it's like spoiler alert, and so
spoiler alert, as if people don't know I crashed your podcast.
well, they don't. On the audio, they don't know yet, right? So it's like it's a reveal later. So this is the special episode because we have Michelle, who will probably play music. I mean, you said probably not. That also means probably, right? It's somewhere in the middle. And then we have Jordan from our fancy Silicon Valley place. And then also we have Paula again as a cameo in this special episode.
Hi, Vijay.
Hello. So, Jordan, you were asking about secret mailing list that Michelle is distributing her secret music.
Yeah. How do I get on the mailing list? That was the question. It was just this piece of witty banter, not really. It's not as funny the second time or third time around, I don't think.
Well, we might have to start the episode again. So again for the third time. So keep it. Okay, you'll have to do it again.
Do you produce the music, Michelle?
No, I'm really not super musical. It was just a fun hobby that I picked up, and I was saying, like, with my friend, it was a way for us to keep in touch because we live in different cities. So, I had to get creative. So now I just serenade her.
All right, can I get on a mailing list to be your friend then?
Absolutely.
So you sing as well as play music when you send her the music?
Sometimes, yeah.
All right, okay.
Nice. Wow. But is it I don't know the genres, because last episode we were talking about some, I don't know, what was it? Punk rock or some other crap? I don't know, something.
Right.
The fuck is that?
Right.
Sorry. What? Okay.
Let's hear Paula. I like Paula's voice. Your voice is very ASMR.
Thanks, Jordan. I don't really have a lot to say at this point. I was looking for an opening. I just happened to be online, and I was wondering what Vijay's been doing because I haven't heard from him in a while. And he said, "Oh, we're doing a podcast. Why don't you come for a cameo?" Totally unprepared.
Well, that's the motto of Defn. No.
But what's interesting about this one, though, is this is the first ever majority female Clojure vegetarian podcast. Maybe it's not all vegetarians either.
Well, at least two of us are. I mean, who is vegetarian? Michelle, are you vegetarian?
Me too, yeah.
All right.
Whoa. Okay, then it's majority
vegetarian. I stand my ground. Okay.
Yes.
Got ya.
I feel like to truly turn over disparity, what was that? The Stack Overflow thing came out a couple weeks ago, and I was looking at the percentages that we would have to get a podcast that's 92% female to do like the inverse demographic distribution, because apparently software developers are 92% male. So
yeah, I think we'll just cut out racetrack and then we'll be good to go.
I don't think that's really the case. Stack Overflow is the respondents tend to be self-selecting, and fewer women respond to it. So while there is a huge gender disparity, I don't think it's quite as bad as that survey suggested.
98%?
I have a theory,
is that what you said?
I think most of the most of the people asking questions in Stack Overflow are men, because those are the people who get stuck on shit. So that also in a possible theory.
Yeah, but is that good though? I mean, what I mean is, like, normally men, like if they're driving or something, they don't ask questions. That's the man thing. The man thing is not to ask. Don't fucking ask. Don't stop and ask somebody directions. Just keep on going and get it wrong forever. That's the male way. Yeah. So maybe
speaking to a lot of people I know who've gone to Stack Overflow, a lot of people are put off by the aggression in some of the responses.
Oh, fuck off. Sorry.
I'm put off by the aggression in like half the chat rooms I'm in these days. Like Stack Overflow.
But isn't it like Stack Overflow, the main reason people go there is for social clout, right? I mean, the number that you get, and that used to be a big thing. I mean, if people are, I want my internet points, and I'm going to go there and then answer first. And it's like first post in Slashdot. So
it's a bit of dick waving, in other words, which is why men tend to go there.
Yeah,
could
be.
Right.
It's like showing off to other people that I know the answer, or that kind of crap. And
I also think that women may have this is just a hypothesis as well, but more of, I guess, a higher emotional intelligence, where they would know who to ask in their life about a question. They have they have a tech question, and they're not just going to like send it out into the ether of the internet to see what bounces back. But it's like, well, doesn't so-and-so know a lot about this? Why don't I just send so-and-so a message and ask, and then so-and-so answers it. And so they don't have to go through like a,
a publicly open thing, you mean?
So
and I mean, it's also it
can be riskier for females to be vulnerable like that online. Being perceived as weak or unknowing, or there's some things associated with that as well. So
it can be riskier to be seen as knowing things online. I've encountered that as well. But I'm really interested. Michelle, do you go to Stack Overflow very much?
I do. I ask the internet a lot. Well, I ask Google. I don't specifically post questions. I look to see what's already been answered. And especially when I was first learning, I didn't really have people to ask. So I feel like I was trained a little bit by the internet. So I am grateful for that. But at the same time, I do see that toxic interaction. And so far, I haven't interacted myself. Probably, because of that impression, but now that I do have that support network, absolutely agree with Jordan. I would just much rather ask somebody than post a question on the internet.
Well, it's also, if it's a person it's an opportunity to reconnect with someone.
Yeah. It's a great way to keep connections alive. And
connections, social life. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Next time I have a technical question, I'm going to you, VJ.
I love the dumbest possible answer. Then you'll stop asking me, like, okay, this is a waste of time. Why am I even asking him?
But isn't Stack Overflow suffering from like rot now, tech rot? I mean, despite all their bullshit about how that could never happen to Stack Overflow, isn't that exactly what is happening? The old answers keep on like that are kind of outdated or at the top because they were accepted answers. So you can't get the right answers now on Stack Overflow, even though the sort of software's moved on. So it's still a valid question, but the answers kind of like now it's like past default, the right answer.
Yeah, you really have to hunt and check the dates, and you look at the syntax to see if they're using old JavaScript or ES6.
And like, forget about the Clojure script. I was going to ask you that too, Michelle. It's so hard. Like, I find like, good luck finding Clojure script answers about Clojure script on Stack Overflow. That's that's not a thing. But what I'll do a lot is like, I'll find the answer in JavaScript and then do like a murder mystery connect back. Well, if this is it in JavaScript, and I read it, and if I do that in Clojure script, and I do this, like, do you do the same thing, Michelle? Where it's like you have to find the answer.
I find it in JavaScript, and then I do that, and then a lot of answers that I find come from Clojure and Slack archives. Right. So they come up in Google, and it's just a link to a web page with the archive. And so I find out some stuff there. And then also in the Jira tickets come up because the thing that I'm like looking for is actually a bug in Clojure script. And I'm like, oh, like it's broken. It's not me.
That is something very difficult to accept, right? You always keep thinking that there is something that I'm doing wrong, before even going to a point like there must be something wrong with this shit already. But Michelle, so what is your journey to Clojure? I mean, of course, the most important thing we'll get to later is, how was it working with Ray? I mean, he's so unprofessional at work as well, and we'll get to this. Or he's that level of annoying even at work. We'll get to these questions later, but. How did you start programming, and how did you end up in
She did say I hired her, mate. Just remember that, okay?
Yeah, sure. you always hire better people than you are. That's the whole point.
That's 100% correct, actually.
I admire you for that.
Yeah, that is correct.
So your journey, Michelle.
Yeah, so I don't even know where to start because it's been
start at the beginning.
Very non-linear, windy journey, but my education was in the arts and humanities, so I didn't encounter any computer science until after I graduated. And I guess my first entry point was my senior project. I had a very unconventional major. It was a hybrid of like fine art, literary arts, just this major called narrative studies that allowed you to take classes in all different departments. So that was one of my majors. And then my other major was interdisciplinary archaeology. I have a hard time saying that.
Whoa.
And so, that brought in elements of anthropology and material science. And at the time, I just wanted to learn as many different things as possible. I was not thinking about my future because
wait. We need to dig into this interdisciplinary archaeology.
Oh God.
What does that even mean? I mean, I thought archaeology is just digging stuff from the earth or something.
It means she digs in different ways, obviously.
Exactly.
Do you even dig? Are you digging it?
I did get to go on a dig in Turkey. And
wow.
Yeah, and like survey different sites. But what makes it interdisciplinary is that it's not couched in one department. There's no archaeology department per se. You take classes in anthropology and art history, and there were archaeology classes like specifically about archaeology, but they were in the art history department. And then you have some science like material science because you're looking at objects. And, they erode over time and you have to restore them. And then GIS as well. So that might have been the first technical thing that I had an affinity with. So I ended up working for one of my professors doing all the GIS stuff because she
Yeah.
couldn't be bothered with it. And, it was buggy. If you've ever looked at ArcGIS, it's a pain at times. So I found that I really enjoyed that aspect of it and making maps. And I didn't do much custom scripting, but it exposed me to that world. And so that was one entry point into tech in a broader sense, I guess. And then the other was through this final project. Because my majors were so all over the place, they were just like, okay, whatever, do whatever you want. We don't have a precedent for this. So
oh my God. That's brilliant.
So I was really inspired by a couple of writers. So my main focus was literature, and Jorge Luis Borges, my favorite writer, has a short story called The Garden of Forking Paths. And it's considered like an early inspiration for hypertext fiction, which is like a electronic new media thing in the 90s, I want to say, where you would navigate through a story through links on a web page that would take you through, depending on what you chose, different parallel storylines. So that was really interesting to me. And there were a couple other writers who embody those ideas just through like nonlinear text and multiple realities. And so Italo Calvino, George Perec. So it's interesting because my interest in tech came from literature. So for my final project, I decided to make a hypertext experience. So a web-based narrative that combined artifacts and stories behind those artifacts, both real and imaginary, kind of integrated into this overarching narrative, but with different paths. Anyway, that all sounds super abstract, but the point is that I had to learn how to make a website.
Yeah. Was there a bit of magic reality in doing that as well? Magical reality.
Right. Yeah. And as soon as I
so you ended up creating like a NeoCities or Angel Fire or
honestly not that far from that, because I learned HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript. Everything was super manual. I think towards the end I discovered jQuery. I was like, whoa. Ooh. And like started and made animations and things. But the idea sounds a lot more complicated than the actual product was, because it was so basic, I knew very little. I mean, I still know very little, but a little bit more than then. And so once I started doing that, I just wanted to keep doing that, and became sort of obsessed with it, just the actual process of making it, not just the thing I was making. And this is second semester senior year. So by the time I've graduated, I was a little bit lost. I didn't want to go get a PhD to be an archaeologist. I realized, like writing for me was better as a personal hobby. And I went to work in nonprofits because at one point I thought I wanted to be a social worker. And during that whole time, I was doing online courses in web development. Just all my spare time went to that, thinking maybe I could get into it. Like at that point, I didn't have high hopes for it. But I did have the opportunity to make websites for friends and friends of friends who are artists and musicians. And those are some of the most fun projects I ever did, because even though they were very basic, the designs and the ideas were really fun. So it was very kind of like GeoCities, and lots of fun animations, and for releasing their music independently. So that was cool to be able to put people's art out into the world through the most prolific platform, I guess, which is just websites.
Oh,
that's absolutely amazing.
So you didn't have any formal training in computing
what kind of
then, other than
did the
being scarred by ArcGIS stuff?
Oh, sorry, I heard. I didn't hear either question because they were happening.
BJ seems to have dropped off the feed as far as I can see.
Oh yeah, he dropped off for a second, but
he's gone now again.
I see him now. Too many cooks in the kitchen. This mobcast is getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's a fucking nightmare.
2,000 years later.
Oh, finally. Okay. Everything is back online. Sorry. So I was asking a question. Who was asking a question? I didn't know who else was asking a question, so I don't care anymore. I'm going to ask my question first. So Michelle, you didn't have any formal computer education other than, starting with ArcGIS and then building, knowledge yourself, like JavaScript and all these things. And how did you end up in quote unquote niche area of ClojureScript then, or Clojure even?
Yeah, so it was pretty much by chance. So after a couple of years of self-learning, just kind of by myself, I felt like I needed to start working with people, and you kind of hit a wall at a certain point of just being in your own bubble. And so I ended up going to this meetup called Code for Denver, which is part of this larger thing called Code for America. And what I liked about this meetup is that you actually work on projects. So it's not just a social event. You go there and there are teams working on projects, volunteering in collaboration with local nonprofits. And, I was working at a nonprofit, it seemed very aligned. So the first day I go, I chose the least intimidating project, which turned out to be a ClojureScript project. but it was the least intimidating because the team was so approachable and welcoming, and the project itself had a small scope. So for for jumping in on something new, I thought this feels good. And then from there,
what was the project, Michelle?
Oh, it was a end of year report for a nonprofit, and so they needed data visualization and they wanted something more interesting than a PDF with numbers. And everything we did at Code for Denver was open source. So the idea was we could make this template, and then other organizations could use it with their own data, and that was one of the driving principles behind all of our projects was, could this be reproducible and useful to other groups? And then go ahead.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that after that project, our team gelled really well. Everybody really enjoyed ClojureScript. So we ended up working on 2 more projects in ClojureScript after that.
Did you have some mentors?
Was this
Sorry, go on, Jordan. Yeah.
What I was gonna say, was this Fig Wheel days or Shadow days, or how hard was getting a project started back then? Because now it's easy as pie. Now I don't think anybody has any excuse. But when was this?
Yeah, there was a bit of a barrier to entry. I think mostly having to do with environment setup. So. I had never made a single page app before or used developer tools. I used Leiningen before NPM. And, but,
wow.
like I said, I think,
Actually, I'm with you too, Michelle. Me too. Because I did that before. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, and I think it gives you a unique perspective because you don't know the pains of the other thing at first. And when people talk trash about it, I was like, it can't be that bad.
No, they're right.
Yeah, I
They're
figured it
right
out.
about
Yeah, that's the
NPM.
way I am too.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, Michelle, did you have some mentors on the Clojure script project? Because it seems like it would be a big ask to just step up and start doing stuff. Or how did that all work out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a developer who was retired and then got really into Clojure script. And then David, who I'm married to now, who was kind of like the project lead. And then myself and a high school student. So so there were 2 experienced developers and then 2 of us who were just learning. And it was a very learning oriented environment.
I'm thinking this might be like a controversial question, but controversy is our middle name in Defn anyway. So I'm going to ask this question and then see, because Michelle and I know Jordan, you're also like entered into software, not doing all the shitty computer stuff, or the so-called formal education, right? I mean, you're getting into this one, and Paula, I mean, you've been in software since the beginning of software, pretty much.
Like how many degrees do you have, Paula?
Don't give
Like
away
it's
my
multiple.
age, No, I always have a lot of respect for people who are willing to come in and just learn software because my background's engineering. I'm sitting on my desk. I'm an electrical engineer, and we did a couple of CS subjects, but my degree was about digital circuit design.
Yeah, but isn't that like everything was electrical
She could
engineering
design
back then,
Jordan's
right?
bed.
That long ago.
Apparently the hotel rooms in.
So that's a bit of a visual joke that off the podcast. Sorry about that. Maybe his wife can cut that one.
No,
but
it was electrical
I
engineering,
came into
right?
the career. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
electrical engineering, but
Yeah.
I came in. It was hard to find electronics design jobs, at least ones that paid any good. And so I started doing software development, and I didn't know how to be a software engineer. I didn't know a lot of data structures and algorithms and things like that CS teaches you. And I had to learn all of that, and pretty much all of the software engineering that I know and that I use are things that I had to teach myself, or that I was directed to by a mentor saying, you should read this book, or so all of the really relevant stuff never came from a university for me. And I get really frustrated with organizations which are only prepared to give a job to someone with a degree in STEM, because a number of the people I know who are really good software developers never learnt that stuff through a STEM degree.
Yeah. I think this is something that I see a lot in at least in the Netherlands, because that is the only country that I'm more familiar with, or relatively familiar with, than India. Here I see people coming into software who are physicists, or who studied pharmacy stuff, and it doesn't matter. And then you just hop into, because I think as Michelle, you're pointing out, like software has become part of everything, like interdisciplinary archaeology, and then you need to know software anyway for that. So I think it's kind of became like indivisible, right, from other so-called domains these days, and programming has become like a essential thing that you need to know. But isn't that like the thing of the Code for America thing, like because you need to know coding as part of your basic skill or something like that?
Oh, you mean in order to participate?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the missions was to be beginner friendly and bring people in, but at times that gets difficult, right? Because people's time and resources are limited. And going back to the team I was working with, none of us really knew Clojure that well. Like there were experienced developers who, were like, oh, I discovered this thing and I want to do something with it. So we were all figuring things out together. And that made a big impression on me because, it showed me you don't have to know something to mentor or teach it. You figure it out with the person who's also learning. You're just a couple of hours or days or months ahead of them. And so, when if I'm helping someone who's less experienced, I'll just be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll figure it out together. Like I'm confident in our ability to figure it out. But like in practice, it kind of had to be the right combination of people, like with these public groups, it really depends on who's coming through and how committed they are and how much time they're putting in.
Well, I think that's like part of the advantage too of we're talking about how the software industry has a lot of different people at this point of different backgrounds, coming onto a team. And I think that's, I would want my team to have the most different, a myriad of perspectives, because I think that's how you solve problems more efficiently. Is I want my team to have all these different backgrounds, and which is ironic when they say, oh, we only accept people with STEM degrees. That encourages like not good problems. It encourages hive mind that doesn't bring out the best problem solving strategies in people. So that, it's funny that you experienced that, Michelle, working on the code for everyone's different backgrounds and perspectives really aided in that exploration and learning.
Well, don't forget Clojure itself came from Rich Hickey, and he didn't come from a CS background.
Yeah.
That's true. He came from a musical background,
Yeah. I did end up learning CS concepts that are very useful. The way I learned it is it's very odd, and I owe it to the mess of the public school system that we have here, because I learned computer science by teaching an AP computer science course with no background in computer science, because they didn't just pluck me off the street, right? Like I had been teaching for a couple of years in a part-time capacity, because I sort of knew how to code, and they cannot find teachers who would choose to do that full time when they can go write code at a company. And so I did that part time with middle schoolers, just with basic. Well, I don't want to call it basic. I don't want to minimize, the stuff that they were doing, because Scratch. Have you heard of Scratch? The MIT block-based programming language. It's Turing complete. It's Turing complete. You can do everything that you can do with another language. And, a little bit of Python, JavaScript. So it was more like a general exposure thing. And after doing that for a couple of years, they asked me to teach higher and higher levels of it. And then all of a sudden I was teaching an AP course. And in order to do that, I had to really learn computer science and then figure out how to teach it to students who had never taken a computer science course before. And it was a lot of fun. I had so much fun doing it, but it was the hardest job I've ever had. My heart goes out to teachers, because I taught one class, and there are teachers who are working 10-hour days, being paid criminally low salaries. And I don't know how they do it, but that's how I learned computer science.
I think it's something
that round of applause as far as I'm concerned. That's fucking awesome. Yeah, really good.
It's I sometimes hesitate to talk about that, because I don't know if it is a little bit irresponsible for the schools or for the students, right? You want to. I did my best to do right by them, but I'm not a trained teacher.
Yeah.
You know, they asked me to stay on and continue doing it, but you know, the kids deserve someone who was trained in classroom management. You know, like my classes, I think they were fun. The kids enjoyed them, but they got chaotic. They need someone who believes in grades. I really struggled with grading.
You're like, you get an A, you get an A, you get an A. Everybody
like
gets
it's
A.
so arbitrary.
I think
And
it'd be nice if you get an F, you get an F, you're all getting Fs.
yeah, but for that moment in time, it was the right thing for that moment, and I got to bring in a lot of projects from my freelance work and what I was doing in real life. And speaking of Chromebooks, that's all they had to work with. So everything we did was browser based, and you know, that's buggy as hell. No terminal, you know, like they couldn't really access the computer, just whatever is, you know, mediated by Chrome. And so at the end of the semester, I told them, don't let this define your idea of what it means to develop. I have 3 screens at home and you have a 12-inch screen. All these things that make it, you know, add friction are not what you would have to deal with if you pursued this, you know.
But at what point you told them, like, okay, Chromebook is shit, you guys just start using Emacs, then you'll actually, you know, realize what is the meaning of life?
Well,
and
that's
everything.
such a problem. That's such a problem with even colleges have, you know, some even companies have people using these web IDEs that is just so hard to use. I think you brought up a really great point, Michelle, with like the developer experience, the friction that some of these tools have. And it's so frustrating to see because having people take computer science courses, say that, you know, in high school, and say they took that AP computer science course, and because the tools are so bad, they just really didn't jive with it. You know, we lose that developer forever who could have some wonderful, awesome things to bring to the table. You know, it's such a shame too if we lose. I think women are more likely to, you know, maybe take a casual computer science class in high school or college, but then if we lose them because the tools sucked, that sucks.
Yeah.
But
And
hey, if there is anybody from your school listening to this, I'm pretty sure they learned a lot of stuff, and then they'll be like super happy. So if any of your students listening to this one, I think they should tweet at you saying, "Hey, that was an awesome class," and then I learned more than you know what I expected. So I'm pretty sure that it's you know it, especially because you had like industrial experience, right? Then you get a different you bring in a different perspective, because in the universities usually, at least in my place when I was studying, like the people who are teaching are teaching by the book. They have no clue about you know any of the version control system, any of the build systems or tests, or none of this shit. It's like you write a C program, 2000 lines top to bottom, and then you're done, and then you move on to the next one. Nobody cares about maintainability, like nothing. So I think you probably you are even, you know, more suited to teach than you are giving yourself credit for. You know, like that would be my opinion. If I had like proper industry person coming and teaching me, I would have been a better programmer when I started, instead of writing you know, shitty code. Well, that I still do, but yeah.
I think you're beyond redemption, DJ. Yeah,
that's true.
Okay.
That's true.
Yeah,
I'm just going to retire in 2 years.
Yeah, I would like to teach again, but in a different setting, more of a ad hoc, individualized setting, I think would be better for me. But I think it did help to have experience outside of you know, formal education. I did have 13 Raspberry Pis that I used for an art installation the year before. So this was such a it was such a time consuming setup, but I brought all of those Raspberry Pis in and, had monitors and had them just try out using the terminal. And we, there's a unit on hacking. And so I had a web app running on my computer, and I had them DDoS me with Artillery, the command line utility. And those are some of my favorite things to do, and like SSHing into each other's computers and opening random videos, rickrolling each other.
Rickrolling, yeah.
So I would like to teach in an environment where that is conducive to that kind of stuff, without, it was a real hassle to do that kind of stuff in a classroom. So, yeah.
So you trained a bunch of hackers is what I just heard. And you want to continue to train more hackers is what I'm hearing. Got it.
But Paul, I mean, you also have a lot of mentoring experience, right? So how do you see this, like teaching via, on the job versus, teaching at different levels? And
it's different when you're at work because of the motivation. I mean, I've also taught in an elementary school, and what I found was that sometimes the kids are there because they were sent along to it or something, and there's no motivation. The kids who are really engaged are amazing to work with, and it's just stunning what a young child can come up with. And seeing them learn how to do something for the first time really makes it worthwhile. But there's so many kids in the class who just don't care. And the more advanced the group is that you're teaching, the more likely they are to have chosen it. And that it becomes more interesting, because when people discover a new thing that they can do, then that's exciting for the teacher.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it is exciting, because I used to do something kind of a dodgy thing when I was studying in university, because I was like, I was short on money. So I used to teach my juniors, so I used to just read the book and then, this chapter I'm going to read, and then tomorrow I'm going to talk about this shit. And this handful of people, not many, I think around 15 folks in the class. It's like an after university thing that I used to teach. And then there is like a couple of guys who are like super smart. So they're always asking me questions like 4 chapters, because they somehow figured out this guy only talks about only next chapter, for fuck's sake. And then I'm like, God damn it, these morons again. And I have to work really my ass off to understand all the crap to explain. And this is some stupid subject called system analysis and design and all the registers and all the crap and that electronics related thing. And they're always moving ahead. Like, you have these kind of people in the class, right? They just keep studying too much or whatever. Super smart bunch of people. And they knew that I'm just like a guy trying to wing it off and then just read the next page and then talk about it before them.
So you've got imposter syndrome, but you actually were an imposter.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing.
It's not syndrome anymore. It's just the reality. It's part of my character now. Anyway, but
well, I think that in that role you were teaching, VJ, versus I feel like teaching and being a teacher is like a slightly different role than being like a mentor.
Yeah.
And they fill different roles. And I don't know what I was going to end that.
No, I would agree there, because a mentor, I think, rarely teaches directly. In my experience, anyway, mentors have said, "Well, have you considered this? And this is a thing you may not have heard of. You should look into that." And they direct me to go and learn my own things. And I try to do that with other people I've mentored, rather than doing a class or taking them step by step through something.
Like
I'll say, this is a thing that's relevant to what we're talking about or what you're trying to deal with, and you should look into that, and just to provide those nudges and a little bit of direction. And it's different to teaching.
Yeah.
And also be a role model, because Paula, I consider so Paula was my actually assigned mentor at the Conj a couple years ago, and that's how we became friends. And I still consider her a mentor to me. And it's so many things. It's seeing how she leads herself in the community, seeing how she carries herself I don't work with her, so I don't get to see that, but I get to talk with her about how her work is going. And, being a mentor is just so many other things besides just, because I would say as far as just technical content, as far as because, you're really about databases right now. I'm really about like Clojure script. And so as far as like technical teaching, I've learned a lot from you, but I don't feel like, I guess, we relate on that level as much anymore, but you teach me so much in so many other areas that's so much more valuable to me at this point, because information I can just go look up or, learn through doing or whatever. But being a mentor is just so much more than that. It's being a role model. It's being a leader. It's just, it's a lot more intensive.
And Michelle, don't you find that, like, because you've when you were at Vouch, when you are at Vouch, when you're working at Vouch, do you find there's a mentorship aspect there as well?
Yeah, definitely. Heather, who's another teammate of mine, and I work closely with David Nolan, who I feel like what you were describing, Jordan, is very similar. It's not like here are the specific details of technical syntax or along those
Fill in
lines,
this if
but
condition. That's it.
Yeah. But they're bigger ideas. They're I think he's really good at looking at a situation or a problem and picking out what are the like important components of this, and what needs to be prioritized. And for me, I think when I look at stuff, or like the details of things, I give them all equal importance, and then get kind of lost in what should I focus on, or what needs to, like how should this be implemented? And there's no rules for how to arrive at that, right? It's not like a cut and dry thing. So hearing David talk through that stuff has been very, I think I'm learning through osmosis, but I don't have like the detailed, this is how you arrive at it. It's more like, let me just see it over and over and over again. And at some point it'll, through osmosis, I'll, absorb it, hopefully.
So also, you're working with David Nolan. He's got to be one of the most intelligent people in the community.
Oh, yeah.
And he's extraordinarily generous as well. I mean, all my interactions with David have been really beneficial for me. And it's amazing what he contributes back to the community in general. So working with him directly, I'm kind of jealous.
It's a shame that I can't find where he is online now. Otherwise, I would have just pinged him and then say, hey, speaking of David, and then we just introduce David, pull him in.
Yeah, I don't take it for granted at all. It's every time we pair or discuss anything really, I definitely feel like I've learned something or leveled up. And like you said, very generous with his time and knowledge.
I think in Clojure community, I think this ratio or the percentage of people who are so open and ready to share their experience is pretty high in my opinion. Because I worked in Perl and Ruby, and I mean, not to shit on other languages, but hey, this is a Clojure podcast, so why not? But it seems like there is some sort of a philosophy in the community in this direction, right? That's what you hear, and you can see how Jordan is talking about Paula, and then we've been doing this for 75 episodes now, and this keeps coming back, like the feedback about people sharing their knowledge and also coming to this show and then talking, telling us, sharing their knowledge as well. So it's
you've learned a lot from me, haven't you, VJ?
Nah, not really. I mean, whenever I'm talking about generous, smart people in the community, it's a set of people excluding Ray. That's basically what I mean. But
all right.
But-
So let's just
So-
move on then. Shut up, VJ. Since,
yes, Ray has been my Yoda for Clojure.
I'm teaching you this, mate. Okay, shut up. Moving back. Joking aside, moving back, Michelle, to the Clojure script stuff and working with David. One of the things we wanted to talk about was the kind of workflow that you're using with Clojure script and Storybook and stuff like that.
And
and Krell, sorry, yes. Yeah. So not to kind of go too deep a dive, but how is that working out? Or what's your kind of feeling as you kind of embrace that workflow?
Yeah, it's at this point I don't even think about it. It's so and that's what you want from a tool, right? That you don't even have to think about it, and you can just run with it. And it's also been cool to see it develop over the last year because David created the library, and anytime there was a bug or any friction, you had the person who could go fix it, and
it's
so
his problem.
And I think it's useful to have people actually using it and see what comes out of that. So we are like guinea pigs in a way. Heather and I are daily users of it, and and it's developed to the point where now it's just so seamless. And I think you already had him on here to talk about Krell.
A little bit.
Yeah, we did. I think, but usually, so it's a long time ago. Nobody, in the internet remembers the stuff. So maybe it's a good idea to explain, like, what is the product that you're working on? What are you doing with Clojure script now? And then, maybe give a quick idea of this tool that you're using and how.
Yeah. So the product is a digital key app. So from your phone, you can lock or unlock basically anything. But right now, our focus is automotive. So
unlock the universe.
Digital car keys. Yeah. Eventually, we'll get there. So the mobile app, David designed it to separate the UI and the business logic. So the UI is essentially a library. It's a node module of the actual app, but we develop it with Storybook and React. So we have all of the components, the UI components written in JavaScript, and so any JavaScript developer can come in and hit the ground running, making UI. And
I'd like to know more about that choice and how you got there. Was it were you part of that? Did you start in Clojure script and then you're like, no, all right, we need to go and just use JavaScript components? Like, how did that?
No, I wasn't part of that at all. So he had already set it up by the time I joined.
But it was like that though, Jordan. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it started like
first.
that.
Yeah.
So right. I remember hearing that the first iteration of the app was all reagent, and but that wasn't really working out. I think it got a bit convoluted, but I can't really speak to that, so I won't. And then when I joined, we had the Storybook, separation of concerns. So with Storybook, you can look at all of your components in isolation and just explicitly give it any combination of props. And it's very functional. Like, you see exactly what renders with, this set of props. And it should do that every time. And it also functions as UI tests in a way, visually, So that's the UI. And then the core application uses Reframe and Reagent. And we import the components from that other repo. And then we pass it all the props from the reagent app. So all the business logic, getting data, data manipulation, all of that originates in Clojure script and gets passed down.
Mhm.
And it separates those two concerns. So when you're debugging, if you verified that in Storybook everything is functioning as it should, then look for the bug in the Clojure script.
Mm.
Mhm.
And what allows us to develop in Clojure script for a React Native app is CREL. So coming back to that, CREL doesn't interfere at all with the React Native workflow, right? So you have the Metro bundler. And so because those are separate too, and that's a theme that's coming up, is the separation of concerns, I guess, decomplexion. So CREL just compiles the Clojure script and inserts it into the index of the entry file of the React Native app, and then Metro Bundler can just do what it normally does with that. And there's hot reloading that just works very smoothly. I worked with React Native in my last job, which was my first full-time software job ever, and we used TypeScript, and the hot reloading just wasn't reliable. Like you would get the app into a certain state and then make some changes to your code. It would reload, but you lost all your state and would have to go click through. And there were ways to avoid that, but you had to know like how to avoid that. Like you had to follow the conventions. So with CREL, like that's not a problem. And then of course the REPL, right? That's the
Yeah.
The REPL. The REPL. Okay.
So yeah, you definitely don't have that in regular React Native development. And so it's just a really great developer experience.
So have you used dev cards before?
Nope.
Or, Michelle?
I haven't. What is that?
Well then, I guess that apparently I haven't used a Storybook or dev cards, but we are looking into. I need to basically, and it provides, from my understanding, a very similar experience of separating the business logic from the UI components, and it kind of lets you create, I guess, a little zoo, a little kind of separate everything out and test it out, see if you like the UI, but it separates everything out.
But I think the dev cards is a Clojure script thing.
And nobody
isn't
quote me on that because
it's probably not that useful in the mobile stuff, maybe in the native space. I'm not sure though.
Well, just the experience of being able to develop your UI is separate from your business logic and kind of that creating those layers of abstraction.
So is that like Storybook where you can see your components in isolation and then import them, or is there a different workflow there?
I don't know what Storybook is.
See, I haven't used either tool, so I'm a horrible person to ask.
I don't know what Storybook is.
That's my understanding.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing that they're the same, I guess. So
my question is flawed because I'm assuming my question is flawed because I'm assuming like this reference is universal. So no worries.
I think maybe zoom out to Storybook though, first of all, because Storybook is really like framework neutral. It happens to support React Native and React and stuff like that, but you can use other JavaScript frameworks as well, can't you?
Yeah.
So that's the big difference, is that you can kind of like use any kind of things in the JavaScript world, which is one of the nice things about ClojureScript. It's one of the things we wanted to do, isn't it? When Rich made it and David, all these other things, is to how do you get access to all of these lovely things in the JavaScript world that that you don't have in ClojureScript yet, or you want to reinvent, and the UI is a really nice place to have that JavaScript aspect, because
So Storybook does let you develop these UI components completely in
Yeah.
isolation away from.
Yeah,
Okay,
completely.
because that's what my understanding. That's what DevCards does.
Well, DevCodes is a Clojure script
Okay, my question
framework,
wasn't
though, so that's
completely
a
off
big
base.
difference. Is that so? You're right in terms of like the isolation and the
Mhm,
testing and that kind of stuff. It's similar, but
mhm,
the difference is that Storybook allows you to kind of like it. Yeah, you can kind of like move the state of the application. You can. It's like you're showing users. It's
mhm,
specifically to show users a kind of story for your application. That's why it's called Storybook. So you kind of like
mhm.
show it in like state, like the
Oh,
opening state, and then you can show it in with various states because you provide like like Michelle was
mhm,
saying, you can provide a variety of properties that show the app in a variety of
uh-huh.
different states. So you can really drive the UI through Storybook completely independently of the application
Okay, so
completely.
Storybook is more of a tool versus DevCard's a framework that is they do
Mm.
similar abstractions, but tool versus
Yeah.
framework. Got it.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
And I think the idea with Storybook and the idea we kind of adopted, why we adopted Storybook was because you can kind of have like designers and UI people and kind of like product managers
Mhm,
talking about things completely independent from the business logic of the application, the front end, because you can kind of
mhm,
like render the app in a very lightweight way and through Storybook. You don't have to do
mhm,
all of the kind of
mhm.
the heavy. Not that the Storybook UI is simple. It's quite no, it's not. But it's but you can do it in an
Mhm.
independent way, in a way that like
Yeah.
yeah.
You don't have to click through the app in like the right sequence in order to arrive at a screen that looks, a certain way in this
Mm.
state. So, if I want to share
Uh-huh.
a screenshot of something or just look at, do my UI changes look right? You just go into Storybook and you give it the props that define the state you want to see it in. And you have a whole list of stories, that's what they're called, that you define. So you might have a story for, the default state, and then, with 2 users or, you however many states you have, and then you can see immediately how did my change affect the UI in all of these states.
Oh, I've just been writing horrible comment blocks all around my components for like like a big chunk of a comment block that does like I'll fake the clicks so I don't have to use my mouse using the REPL, and it'll be like it's a mess. So okay, I could get away from that mess. Good,
Nice.
good to know. I like it.
So, Michelle, so you started with JavaScript. Well, the how do you call that? Like the foundations of the web, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then now you're working on the native stuff, pretty much like mobile applications. So, do you see any friction between, the stuff that you learned, which is on the web, and then now we are bringing that web technologies to build native apps on mobile applications? Do you see any friction, or how easy was it for you to um, build native apps using the technology stack that you knew already?
Well, with React Native in particular,
Hmm.
when you're starting, it does feel accessible because it's React.
Yeah.
But then there are quirks that you discover along the way. There are major differences, like you don't write CSS. All styles are JavaScript objects. And you can do that in React, but you don't unless you need to conditionally style something and, pass it to the component. But yeah, so you think about styling differently. There's platform specific quirks to think about and be aware of. And yeah, the components are slightly different. So you just pick these things up as you go. And but it's not like you have to know them all up front.
Yeah, of
And
course.
you can get started, and then you hit something, and then you ask Google, and then now you know.
Yes.
Maybe it's the experience,
So,
the different
okay, you
part
said
of
you
it
think
is the.
about styling
Oh,
different.
sorry, go on, Jordan. Go on.
Well, I just want to touch on what she said about you think about styling different, because have seen kind of I guess, I feel like there are kind of two camps of thinking, where you have, CSS, SCSS, and then this kind of, I'll call it tailwind style, but it's like the inline, it's more closely resembles like inline styling. And then there's another, is it CLJS style or Stylefy? It's kind of that way of thinking versus like the SCSS, just classic CSS. And which camp would you say that I guess your development style falls in? Using this style of development. Is it which camp? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, that
Which
makes
camp do you
sense.
think it kind of
Can you
falls in?
remind me? So Tailwind, is that the one where you have it defines classes for very specific, like margin top or margin left, and you compose those as like your class names?
Yeah, it's like dynamic. I actually haven't used it a ton because I am of the other camp. I am of the CSS. But I've seen Tailwind used, and I have worked on a code base that did the same style of like dynamic CSS, where like in each namespace at the top was like, the styling was defined, and it was dynamic. It more closely resembles inline styling is the best way I can describe it, versus CSS that we all know.
Oh, yeah, no.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, so with React Native, it's all inline styling. So you don't have class names or and then your quote unquote CSS files or JavaScript files where you have an object where you export an object where you use the keys like you would class names. So they're all just key value pairs, and then the values are objects with the CSS properties. And so with React Native, you are forced to do things that way, but you can merge objects. So if you have we have a basic style guide where we've defined like your heading styles and your body text and labels. And so we can then spread those along with more specific styling. And so I think we kind of try to do both within the constraints that are given.
Yeah.
And then in terms of general usage, I have worked on projects that use, I forget the name of the library, but it's, I think it's similar to Tailwind, where like you have a library that defines all these classes for you, and you compose them in your class name string. And if it's already there, I'm fine with it. Like I'll use it. There are major benefits to it. Like I just type in the classes that do the exact things I need, but then they get really long. And then doing responsive styling with it can, it get cumbersome. But if it's there, I'll use it and I'll enjoy it for what it is. If I'm starting a project, I'll probably just define styles myself, because I do like having that custom control. So, I mean, I think in general, I'm not extremely opinionated about things that, if it's already there, I'll use it, but given the choice, I'll do what I want.
Yeah.
But I think not having
and so
CSS.
Is it even able to integrate?
Oh. Go ahead, Jordan.
I'm sorry, Vijay, you go on.
Okay. I'll take it then.
Fine.
Yeah. So I was wondering because maybe my uneducated guess would be that I did a little bit of iOS development at some point. So I don't think they're having like a compiled CSS or hierarchical CSS is going to match. I mean, it's not easy to apply that to iOS controls that easily. So I think it makes sense that in React Native that you're doing
Mhm.
quote unquote in the code styling rather than
Mhm.
extracting it separately and then defining, because
Mhm.
that's usually not easy.
Mhm.
From my limited experience with iOS development, because you're each component you're styling
Mhm.
separately. That's probably the reason why
Mhm.
those are separated, I guess. It's not like web thing is going to translate directly
Yeah,
to
yeah.
native stuff.
Yeah, my question comes from because I don't really have most of my experience is
Yeah.
doing web apps, single like SPAs. So I haven't done a
Hmm.
lot of native stuff, which is where that
Yeah, makes sense,
question
I think.
came from.
Maybe the other aspect of it, Michelle, to talk about is like the device, aspect of it, because the big difference to me between like web development and native development is the fact that you have this actual mobile device that you want to run things on. So how does that work out? That you can actually run things on a device or on a simulator. Because obviously when you're running in the web, you're just running in the browser. But with the iOS and the Android, you've actually got hardware, external hardware. So how are you finding that aspect of it? Trying it out on a real bit of hardware as well as the simulator or the browser that you have.
Yeah, it's definitely more cumbersome. There's a bit of setup involved. You have Xcode and Android Studio, and you have to enable certain permissions. So, when I do switch back to working on a web app in my free time, I'm just like, whoa, this is so easy, But it's also very satisfying to see it on a device and
Yeah.
use the app.
Uh-huh.
We're at a point now where most of the time we do have to run it on a device because we use like Bluetooth and things like that the simulator can't simulate. So you get used to it.
Hmm.
You're able to use the REPL and other things, all the other affordances on these devices that are very tricky in the JavaScript world or the kind of native world. Whereas with ClojureScript, you can run a real REPL onto the real device, which I think is a super awesome benefit.
Definitely, yeah. It's super convenient just to be able to go in the REPL and navigate to a different screen or run functions in isolation. And yeah, there's no friction. It just works on the device.
So Jordan, you're on one end of like web application side, and then I can see Michelle on the other side. So Paula, did you dip your toes into mobile stuff as well in ClojureScript, or you're somewhere in the middle
No, I
mostly?
haven't. No, I mostly work on server or library style code. I mean, I do a little bit of front end things just to drive stuff that I've got, but I'm not talented in that way, and I'm mostly like to push computers around to do the stuff that I want, and the user interface things are things that other people are far more talented than I am. So I create simple apps that have like a button on it to do something.
That's pretty much every app.
So what I'm hearing is between the three of us, though, we
Yeah.
have skills across the board. Myself,
That's
Michelle,
the whole
and
stack.
Paula, we could,
Yes.
we could kill it.
I think this is the birth
The
of a
whole
startup.
stack.
This is you. Yeah,
Hey, I'm
exactly.
in Silicon Valley now, so
We need to come up with one of those magical ideas that they have on Silicon Valley.
You can make the world a better place.
Totally.
So far, I'm very unimpressed, I have to tell you. The most interesting thing is the circuit board art above my bed. That's.
Have you tried to put a REPL into your bed?
Oh Oh my gosh, I try. Actually, the room I have here is surprisingly low tech. There's not even like a USB. Like my seat on the Delta flight was more high tech than my room. There's not even like a USB port here for my.
Did you check if there are any
phone.
vacuum tubes lying around there?
We have
There's still like a few. Oh,
vacuum
like
tubes?
vacuum tubes, the things before transistors. Anyway. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not the real
Okay,
Dyson
okay,
vacuum or
I was thinking,
that one.
yeah, I'm like, did I bring my Dyson? No, I should have. It's the one thing I didn't
So you're
pack,
down
I
near the
guess.
southern end of the valley today, aren't you? Near Cupertino? Okay.
Yeah, I'm in Cupertino right now.
Nice. So,
Woo. So you said you're in Denver, Michelle?
Oh, I think my audio dropped.
No,
Hello?
Jordan's audio dropped for a
Oh.
moment. I just heard her finish with Michelle.
Okay.
One thing we should maybe make clear, Jordan's in Silicon Valley, but she's in a hotel room.
yeah.
Yes, I am having some tech difficulties because I'm visiting California. Like I said, unimpressed with the tech in Silicon Valley. Much better
in the
back
middle
home
of
on the East Coast.
nowhere. I mean, Ray lives in the middle of nowhere in Belgium. He has better internet than Silicon Valley. This is not fair.
Don't tell him.
Not fair. Oh, my question was, where are you,
Yeah.
Michelle? You said
I'm
Denver?
in Denver, Colorado.
Are you still in
Yeah.
Denver? Oh, cool. Where?
Yeah, we need
where?
exact address so we can send you like DoorDash delivery or something right now. Please let us know.
Well, I bet she's gonna be like, I'm real. No, I bet she's gonna be like, I'm real cool. I live in Boulder, and I'm gonna be like, cool. Boulder is cool, and then we could be like cool together. You know?
I don't think I would ever live in Boulder. It's a little mountain bubble that I love to visit, but I don't think I would.
Uh-huh.
Huh?
Are you telling me Colorado is now Colorado?
Oh.
It's all right. No.
No, she's saying she's too cool for the coolest place in Denver. Is actually what she just said.
You mean Colorado? Denver and Boulder are different cities.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, they're about an hour apart.
Okay, I think of Boulder as I think of them as the same area because I'm not from the area. I visited Denver and I went to Boulder, so I'm like, of course, Boulder must be in Denver. I was visiting.
I'd say
Denver.
they're very different.
The Denver greater area, I guess.
Yeah, you could probably slip it into the Denver greater area, but I think it's a stretch. Yeah, and they're very different.
Okay, so I guess Ned doesn't count as does that Netherlands count as Denver greater area?
What's Ned?
Ned?
Oh, Netherlands. Yeah. I have to say, like, I'm a bad Coloradan because I don't go into the mountains very much. I'm a city rat. I'm from New York. I was born and raised in Queens. And so I came out here, and at first, I thought I would go spend a lot of time in nature, and I wanted to be that kind of person, but it just never, it didn't really happen.
Okay, that makes sense.
So how is the Clojure community in Denver then, in Colorado in general?
So there are a couple of meetups. There's Den of Clojure and functional programming meetups. I haven't been really involved. I know there are companies here, a couple of companies that use Clojure and ClojureScript, but as far as the community goes, I feel like I'm pretty new. I don't, I'm not plugged into
the matrix.
Yeah.
And it's been hard over the last 18 months to really connect with local communities anyway.
Yeah. Especially last year, yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh. I have a question. As a ClojureScriptian, do you feel any sort of I don't want to say divide. Divide is too strong of a word, but have a hard time relating to, because I do know like some people that are based in Denver greater area that are, Clojure, very into Clojure and like data science. And like that is just doesn't have a ton of overlap with like ClojureScript, for example. And I think I'm very similar to you in our development styles, kind of our interests. And I know personally, I've found a hard time like wanting to relate to these people so bad, but just not having a ton of common ground.
That's an
How
interesting
have you experienced that
question.
at all? Like, do you feel as a ClojureScript and
I don't think I interact with enough Clojure or ClojureScript people around here in person, at least, to feel that. I don't know. I just need to get out more. That's the answer. I need to go find out my answer to that question. And
But isn't like data science in the end, there's a lot of visualization aspects which should be a good fit for ClojureScript.
Well, there is a lot of
I
XG
feel.
boost there, not just
well, maybe
visualization.
I'm just not smart enough. I think also part of it is just like maybe I'm just not smart enough to hang with the data science kids. I just like I try, but I'm just I don't know. I dip my toes in and out of Cycloge, occasionally, but yeah, I don't know. I've had a hard time trying. Even just like the tools and stuff are just different. Even though Clojure and ClojureScript are the same language, they're not. It's just
They're
a
not.
different way of
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah,
Paula, what are your thoughts on this?
I was thinking about this as you asked. I mean, I go on Clojure in Slack, I go into the Clojure room and into ClojureScript room. And in the ClojureScript area, the majority of people talking about things are talking about React and Hiccup and all of these UI elements to it. And I tend to get involved more when Mike Fikes starts talking. Because, I mean, what I'm building with databases is it all runs in ClojureScript. And so I'm connected to ClojureScript. I'm filing tickets in Jira, and not many, but I'm involved with that, and I follow it, and I'm really conversant with a lot of the differences from Clojure to ClojureScript, and a lot of what I write is in CLJC files, and so I have a lot of interest in ClojureScript, but there's also a disconnect with the majority of people who are running ClojureScript because they're doing UI development, which I'm not really focusing on that at all, or barely touching it. And recently, I've had a few things writing code for Ray, for instance, where I'm writing Clojure, and I get to interact with the JVM again. And when you're in CLJC files, I try to eschew the JVM wherever possible, and just being back in that environment in some ways is liberating because I can use the full power of the machine, and I can really dig into certain things that I can't do when I'm trying to keep it portable between the languages. And it's interesting interacting with the community on Clojure versus ClojureScript, and ClojureScript is this community which is how does the compiler work, and where does the syntax take you, and what's the JS that's going to be generated from that, versus how do I interact with React and components, and trying to create UI elements effectively. So there's that division in ClojureScript, and then the division from ClojureScript to Clojure, and it's and there's an overlap between the two of them as well, because especially with beginners, people who are saying, well, what's the most idiomatic way to write this? Or I've got this structure, what's a really good way to do this because I've got I can't figure it out, or I have an algorithm which seems to be too slow. Can someone come up with an idea here? And there's a real overlap between the languages there. And so there's like these subdivisions in the communities. And I straddle some of them, and I look onto others.
And you, Michelle, did you try?
You should come work at Vouch because the SDK is written in ClojureScript, and so there is that straddling there because the mobile app consumes the SDK and it also communicates with the API, and so it's that middle layer there that is really important. But then you would be able to work with Mike Fikes
and David.
Yeah.
Good luck tearing her hands from Cisco. Would not be very happy about that. Let me tell you.
But Michelle, do you already
You know,
do you try
Defn is
something
a
from
job interview process, though, so it's okay.
Anywho, Michelle, so I was just, because now we are talking about Clojure on JVM. Did you ever tried Clojure on JVM, like building the backend services or something, or were you mostly working on Clojure script area mostly?
I'm sorry, you kind of went into this auto tune
Ooh, nice.
limbo.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, that was. I think you missed my a cappella performance, but anyway. I was just asking because most of the time it seems that you're working on Clojure script side of the world. Did you ever try anything with Clojure on JVM? Did you work on and did you build any backend in your web apps or at the job?
I never really worked on it directly, but at Code for Denver, there were backend services written in Clojure, so I would dip my toes in there. And anything I know about Java, I learned through that, like through interop with Clojure. So I mean, I find that really interesting. I would like to learn more.
Yeah.
And at Vouch too, actually, where I've been getting more exposure to Java through the Android bridge of the SDK, and I've really enjoyed that actually. Like Java is it's a lot wordier for sure, but there are cool things about it. Like there are cool things about it, and the same with Objective C. It's good to see these older languages, you know, like to have the full picture, the lineage of these things.
Yeah.
And
you make me feel old now.
Like a Clojure script kid over here.
I like it, the older languages.
Yeah. You're really showing your Clojure
I really
script
didn't mean to
kidness.
do that.
No. I'm not taking it in a derogatory way or anything. It's true. I mean, like Java has been there for more than, I don't know, fucking 20 years now. So it's an old language. Makes sense.
Yeah, and you can see where a lot of things in JavaScript came from, borrowed ideas there, and you know, just like learning any new language is really fun.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know about you guys, but I think we've been going for a long time, and this has really been fascinating and awesome. But I think we should start to kind of like gently wrap it up with your favorite question, VJ.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that is the only question that we are all here for. I know. So Michelle, I mean, do you use Emacs or some other shit? That's the bigger question here.
Do you mean for my IDE or
for everything? What do you mean by IDE? I mean, Emacs is for everything.
From walking
the dog,
your desktop too. You can Emacs your desktop.
Feeding your plants, you know, everything.
I use VS Code, occasionally IntelliJ, and Vim in the terminal. So
I think this is episode number 77. So we're gonna cut this part out, and then we'll make sure that everybody knows that you're still using Emacs.
I hope we can still be friends.
We'll see about that.
Frenemies, I think, is the difference.
No. I think we're all friends. I mean, Emacs is going to be there forever anyway, so we have plenty of time to catch up.
Yeah, one day I'll venture into that, see what it's all about.
Please do.
So Michelle, is there any like other like subject or area that you think would be interesting to cover just in the last like 5 or 10 minutes? Just that's of kind of like that you want to just get out there?
Your secret music mailing list. That is the biggest one.
Well, so these days, more than music, I would say I do more visual or like interactive art, with always with some kind of electronic component, and I guess that is sort of where I came from too. As I was getting my bearings with coding, I was trying things out through art installations, or I did a residency at Library 21C, which is like a library of the 21st century with a maker space, and trying to make that more accessible. And so I consider that like sort of where I'm coming from, and hopefully can stay connected to even as I go in this different direction. And that's all I got.
Man, it's so much. No, this has been brilliant. It's really fantastic.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Michelle. I think it's kind of an inspiration to see your journey from non-computing stuff and then getting into computing and building one of the most impactful kind of projects that you're working on, right? So it's awesome to see, and then using learning completely new language and applying your skills across everywhere, and also teaching kids. And I really hope at least some of your students are going to listen to this podcast and they feel like, yes, that's our teacher, and that should be a really proud moment. And we wish you like a really continued success on this one. And I'm sure Ray did a good job of picking the right person for Vouch. So that's for sure. And thanks a lot for gracing this episode. From all the way from Silicon Valley, Jordan. And yay! And we'd like to have you more crashing this one, and special cameo appearance by Paula, like the last second. Sorry for pulling you into this at the last minute or last second.
I was working on a talk, and I thought, I haven't heard from DJ in ages, and I just said hello, and like, we're doing a podcast. You want to do a cameo? Sorry.
I'm losing battery.
Bye.
I'm dropping off my 2% warning. Oh God, bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Defn. And the awesome vegetarian music or the track is Melon Hamburger by Pizzeri. And the show's audio is mixed by Wouter Dullert. I'm pretty sure I butchered his name. Maybe you should insert your own name here, Dullert.
Wouter.
If you'd like to support us, please do check out our Patreon page, and you can show your appreciation to all the hard work or the lack of hard work that we're doing. And you can also catch up with either Ray, with me, for some unexplainable reason. You want to interact with us, then do check us out on Slack, Clojure Slack, or Clojureverse, or on Zulip, or just at us at Defn Podcast on Twitter. Enjoy your day, and see you in the next episode. Defn.
77.
I'm a pro at this now after
76.
episodes.